Welcome to Royal Legacy, where we will explore the rich athletic history and deep family connections of BYU sports. Join us as we honor the past, celebrate the present, and look forward to the future of the BYU Cougars. Here's your host, Lauren McClain.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Lauren McClain, and welcome to Royal Legacy, where we dive deep into the family connections of BYU sports. Today, I'm joined by former BYU basketball players, Cougar legends in their own right, and brothers, Mark and Devin Durrant. Mark and Devin, thank you guys so much for coming on with me.
Thank you.
We are happy to be here, Lauren. Thank you, and I'm really excited about hanging out with my brother for a little while also.
Yeah, well, we just talked about this. This is the first time you guys have done an interview together, so things are going to get interesting.
Devin left me to go live in Idaho, too, so I don't get to see him as often as I like anymore.
I know, but he's around good people, it sounds like, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, Lauren, I'm just going to try to sit back and relax and listen to you and Mark talk, so that's my goal.
All right, let's do it. Well, I'm going to start with you, Devin, actually. You're both entertainers. You're great public speakers. Devin, you were a general authority that spoke in general conference a few times. Mark, you're the radio color commentator and very entertaining at that. I love listening to you. And I hear the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Your dad married my brother and his wife several years ago, and I was too young to go, but my parents said they laughed the entire ceiling. So I don't know how appropriate that is, but they just said their dad is one of the funniest guys I've ever met. So Devin, how has your dad influenced both of your abilities to have confidence in front of large groups of people like that?
Well, Mark and I, we it's hard to come up with a bigger blessing than the parents that we had. You know, Dad was more visible, but Mark and I both had a special relationship with our mother, and she favored me just a little bit over Mark. But that was part of what that was all about. George Durrant was, how can I help people feel good about themselves? How can I give them confidence? And so we were fortunate enough to live in a household where that was kind of our parents' MO was how can we lift these children, help them believe in themselves?
Mark, how about for you? Is that something similar that you took from your parents?
Yeah, I have no idea why we were so blessed as children to have such marvelous parents. And my father was quite a prolific speaker in the church. He wrote many books. And so my whole childhood, almost every Sunday, I was going to listen to him give a talk. And he was just masterful at it, of making people feel loved and comfortable and laugh and laugh and laugh. And I just think growing up, that was the greatest teacher I could ever have for being in the public eye or being on the radio, listening to my dad talk, because he was just so good at it and so sincere, and people just really related to him. And it was amazing to see that. And then, like Devin said, as great as my dad was, and a lot of people know about my dad, but my mother is the superstar of our family and the backbone of our family, and just a huge part of who we all are. And she passed away a while ago, and we miss her dearly, but she was everything right and good about the Durrant family.
And how many kids are in your family?
There's 8 children.
Wow.
Devin is the third oldest, and I'm the youngest. So even though he says he was my mother's favorite, we all know the baby is the favorite. So
I'm the baby, so I 100% agree with that. Devin, how would you describe what life was like growing up in Provo, Utah with 7 siblings?
It was idyllic. We had a wonderful neighborhood. We spent most of our time outside on the streets playing different games and riding our bikes and taking whatever money we could find over to Curly's Market to buy some sweet treat. And when I look back on my childhood, I just think, wow, couldn't have been any richer, any sweeter, and a lot of good memories.
Mark, how would you describe, because you guys are like 11 years apart? Is that right?
Yeah.
How would you describe your relationship as brothers growing up? Because the competitive nature, when there's that big of a gap, isn't quite there. So what was your relationship with your brother like growing up?
Well, I was a little bit of a straggler. So my older siblings, I didn't really grow up with, but one of the great blessings of my life has been able to connect with them and become dear friends later in life. My brother Matt, the oldest, and my sister Catherine, who's passed away, I became so close with, and Devin as well. And, my first memories are watching Devin play basketball and going to BYU games. That's where my love of BYU came about, because I was Devin's little brother and got some special access to go hang out with Danny Ainge and Fred Roberts and Steve Trumbo, Greg Kite, and all that crew. I mean, imagine that as a 8, 9, 10-year-old. And so that was pretty special. But Devin was always kind of larger than life for me. He was a superstar. He was one of the all-time greats ever at BYU, and played in the NBA. And so, I mean, I was always incredibly proud to be his brother. It was a challenge at times because he was so much better at everything than I could ever be. And so that was a little bit hard to find my identity. But again, as I've gotten older, I just love him so much. He's so kind and good. And I used to think, well, why does everything he touched turn to gold? I mean, what's going? I'm struggling here, and everything seems to work out for Devin. And I've just come to realize it's because he's such a magnificent person. He works so hard at everything he does. He didn't.
Lauren, can we cut him off at this point?
Please,
Hey,
please.
keep quiet over there. But anyway, in short, it's hard. It's hard to be jealous of him or have any resentment, because he's just such a magnificent human being, and he's so good and pure and kind and supportive. Man, if everyone believed in me like my brother Devin, I would really be a superstar, because he has been just an unbelievable support to me in my life.
You mentioned in your Deep Blue podcast with Jason Shepard that for a while you didn't know your name was anything other than Devin's little brother, right?
That's absolutely true. And like I said, I love that. I loved being associated with Devin, and it's even works in my favor now, because it's been so long since we played that people mix us up together, and people think I was much better player than I was, because they think I'm Devin. But I will say one of the highlights of my life was when I think somebody stopped Devin in the mall once and said, "Aren't you Mark's brother?" And so that was like the culmination of everything that I'd hoped for, that finally Devin got a little bit of that medicine.
Yeah, Devin, what's it been now that you got Mark on the radio, and he's very well known around the BYU community? What's it been like for you to kind of get a taste of that? Like, oh, are you Mark's brother?
It has been wonderful. And it's so fun how it's a bit of a role reversal where, yes, sure, I had my 5 minutes of fame, but now I'm just lost in history, and I get to walk around and people say, "Now, are you Mark Durrant's brother? He's on the radio, right?" And then I just beam with pride and get to say how much I love my brother. And I remind them, he has been on the radio for 28 years, top that. And so it's really fun, because I'm old news, but Mark Durrant he's current news. And so I relish in his shadow.
He's a great follow on Twitter too. Mark, very entertaining. Devin, my dad told me. Yeah, he is.
That one, I just need a little boost, a little humor, a little wit. I just go out on X and say, "Now, what has Mark said today?"
I do that sometimes. Devin, my dad told me yesterday that you were the first high school player he ever saw dunk when you were playing at Provo High School. He attended a game. He'd never seen a high schooler dunk. So you're ingrained in his mind. Where did your love for basketball stem from?
Oh, thank you for that question. It makes me think about when I was back in Kentucky. Our father was a mission president there from 72 to 75, and I was a 7th to 9th grader, and Mark was almost a newborn. He was 2 years old at that time. But for me, that was really pivotal as far as basketball development, because I had the perfect coach when I was in 8th grade, and he was mean as could be. And he made us work so hard. And at the end of that season, I had determined that I would never play any more basketball because it was too hard. And he pushed us to our limits. And I sat around for a couple of weeks, and then first thing I grabbed the basketball and went out and started shooting hoops, because he had instilled a love of the game in me at that young age, and that was really the beginning of my love for the game back there in Kentucky, and then when his dad's missionary service concluded, I ended up as a sophomore at Provo High School.
Mm. And then you just took over from there. An incredible high school career. And Mark, at what point did you feel like you had emerged from your brother's shadow and became your own player in person?
At no point did I ever feel that way, because Devin was such an amazing player. I remember one of those first memories was in the state tournament his senior year. They were playing Box Elder, and I think he scored 38 of the 42 points for Provo, and Provo won that game. And I remember thinking, I was just so in awe of my brother, and then the great things he did at BYU. Jimmer's pretty good, but if you really want to see some great offense, go back in the archives and watch Devin Durrant play. He was such a transcendent offensive player, but and I don't want to get out of his shadow. I love the association. As much as I joke about being Devin's little brother, that's one of the dearest things for me, is to have my name associated with my brother Devin. And I did my own things. I wasn't the offensive player that he was, but I certainly worked hard and played good defense. And my role was different. I wasn't the superstar. I was the guy that tried to make the superstars better. I think Devin would have liked to play with me, because he would have got some good passes and some good screens. And so, we all have our different roles. The world needs superstars, but they also need role players. And I'm content with that. I loved my time at BYU. It was a great blessing. And that time playing enabled me to get my foot in the door with Greg Wrubell and have a different kind of impact on BYU sports. And I've really cherished that. I mean, it's not a big deal to be the radio guy for BYU, but it is to me, and it makes me feel like I'm still part of BYU, and in some tangential way, I'm there and part of the program, and I just love it so much just to be still a part of things at BYU.
Well, how many players have you seen come in and out of this program in 28 years? I'm curious, who would you compare your game to of maybe some of these more recent teams?
Well, it would be a huge, enormous exaggeration, but I always liked myself to be a Richie Saunders type. But then Richie became an incredible offensive player like Devin. I mean, maybe a freshman Richie Saunders I was like, that just played hard and gets after it. I mean, you never question Richie's commitment and how hard he works. And so I love that about him. And I tried to be that kind of guy. He's much better than me, obviously, but I relate to those guys that are kind of just the defensive guys that go out and put it all on the floor, and those are my kind of guys. But I sure love watching the superstars. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I just love basketball, and I love basketball at a high level, and that's why it's been so fun watching BYU these last couple of years, because they're getting better and better, and the future looks incredibly good. So it's super fun. And after 28 years, so many players, and now their kids are coming through, and it's a little depressing, but also very, very cool.
That has to be a little bit weird. So Devin, you played for BYU from 1978 and 1980, and then 82 to 84. So there might be a lot of people listening to this who weren't able to see you play, like me. So again, Mark, who would you compare your brother's kind of offensive style to, one of these recent players?
That's a good question. I mean, I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head, and part of it's because Devin was so unique. I mean, he was able to really create shots out of thin air. He had an unbelievable touch off the backboard. He used the rim so well, and I mean, the three-point shot, I don't even know if Devin had a three-point shot at the first of his career, but that wasn't a big deal. So, he was just so unique in the 15-foot range and had such an amazing touch, amazing ability to draw fouls. I'm sure if I thought about it, I could come up with a good comparison, but the reality is Devin was kind of a one-off. He's such a unique talent. And like I said, your assignment, Laura, is go and get some archives on Devin because, I mean, there was a video came up a little while ago, and I remembered it well, but BYU was playing Georgetown, and Devin, it was kind of one-on-one between him and Patrick Ewing, and Patrick didn't lose a lot of those, and Devin able to use his body and his arm and score on Patrick, and that was just like there was literally no one, even the great Patrick Ewing, that could stop Devin from scoring.
Wow.
Lauren?
Yes.
Can you see why I love my little brother so much?
I know everyone needs a Mark in their life to hype him up, right?
I know. I can't wait to get this recording. Whenever I'm having kind of a rough day, I'll just put it on and listen to all these nice things that Mark says. It's kind of funny. Mark was thinking he was like Richie Saunders, and if you'd asked me that question, I would have said, the player I want to be is Richie Saunders. To me, he's such a phenomenal player, and my strategy always was to get as close to the basket as I could because I couldn't shoot that well, but I could make a layup. But Richie, the way he attacks the basket, I just think, man, I love that guy. And then his accuracy from long range, and also his toughness, meaning when the game's on the line, I want the ball in Richie's hands. So we got two of the Durrant brothers that kind of both want to be Richie Saunders.
Yep, and he's inspiring a brand new generation of kids that want to be just like him as well. He's had an incredible journey. Devin, as a kid, did you always want to play for BYU? Because Mark was able to watch you, and obviously your dad was a professor at BYU. But when you were young, what made you choose BYU?
Well, thank you for that one, because I grew up as a Cougar fan, and interesting enough, one of my favorite things to do was listen to Paul James. But we would, for basketball and football, and so I know other people feel about my brother Mark and Greg Wrubell how I felt about Paul James. I'd live and die on those radio broadcasts. And so as a young boy, it was just natural for me to want to go to BYU. But as I got older, I made friends up at the University of Utah, and we had some recruiting interest from University of Louisville and University of Kentucky to go back there. And so it was a fun process. It's always nice to be recruited, and people make you feel important. And but eventually, the story is told of one morning, my mother came down to my bedroom, and she woke me up, and she stood above me as if she was an angel in the air. And she looked down and she said, "Now you're going to BYU. You go tell Coach Arnold that you're going to BYU." So I heard it from my mother, and that was the final clincher. And I told Coach Arnold I wanted to be a Cougar.
Oh, I love that. You always listen to your mom. I think that's great advice. Mark, what do you remember about your first time stepping on the Marriott Center floor?
Well, first of all, I didn't need an angelic visitation. I wanted to go to BYU. It wasn't a question of me wanting BYU. It was a question of whether or not they wanted me. And it took a little while, but I convinced them that I was worth the scholarship. And Coach Roger Reed was my first his first year was my freshman year. And we just lost Mike Smith, who was one of my favorite people, an all-time great as well, another great offensive superstar that Devin played with, and so expectations weren't very high for our team, but we did have the great Marty Haas and Andy Toolson and Steve Schreiner and Kevin Santiago, Mark Heslop and others, and we ended up tying for the conference title and going to the NCAA tournament. We were picked to finish, I think, last, and so that was really satisfying. But there was some great games. I remember against Utah State. That's a big deal back then. And the Marriott Center was rocking. And Lauren, this was my dream to play at BYU. I mean, my whole life had been leading up to that. And here I was, and 22,000 people at the time were there, and we got behind by about 20 points after the first few minutes. And Coach Reed called timeout, very lovingly told us we better start playing better.
I'm sure.
So, yeah. And so we got fired up, and we had a great offensive plan. This was our plan: give the ball to Marty Haas, and Marty had an amazing game, and we caught up. And as you know, when you catch up in a game like that, the crowd starts going nuts. And finally, we were only down by 1 point, and the crowd's going crazy, and it was late. And I remember coming down, and I cut to the basket, and Andy Toolson passed it to me, and I went in and I laid it up. And when that ball went through the basket, I've never in my life heard anything so loud. It was 22,000 people screaming and yelling because Mark Durrant had just made a basket. And I remember running back down the floor. My feet didn't touch the ground. I didn't have a lot of offensive highlights, but that was certainly one that it was just like a culmination of everything I'd worked for and all the baskets I'd made when no one was there to cheer. To finally have that experience, one of my first games, and be in the Marriott Center. And I mean, it was quite glorious, actually. And so, I mean, I just feel so blessed to have played at BYU and have that brotherhood with others that have played. And it's a real special thing. I mean, I mentioned a lot of names already, but and then in the broadcasting, 28 years, I have all the names, and it's a real honor to be part of that group.
Devin, what was it like for you after you had already had your career to then watch your little brother be able to have success at BYU?
It was so gratifying because Mark and I, we didn't really spend a lot of time together as it relates to basketball because of the age difference. And so for me, it gave me a reason to come back to BYU to watch him play. And one of the things I love about his game is he was so unselfish. And I think his mental goal was, how can I make my teammates look better? I think he's one of his dear friends is Russell Larson. And I think Russell likes Mark because Mark's just such a good guy. But I think a big part of it is just all the passes that Mark threw to Russell. Russell's a great scorer, and every great scorer needs a friend out there who's going to get him the ball. And that was my brother Mark. And that's the way he lived his life. He just always looking for different opportunities to allow other people to excel. And that's the kind of teammate he was. And I think he said that I would love to have played with my brother Mark. I had some teammates like him. One was a guy named Brett Applegate. Brett Applegate was a tough guy, but he set a great pick, and Greg Kite would set a great pick, and they made my life easy out there. And that's the kind of basketball player Mark was. Just how can I help out a teammate? And he did all the stuff that, as they say, doesn't really hit the stat line. But if you need somebody to play tough defense or get on the floor for a loose ball, do the real work. You want Mark Durrant on your team.
Mark, you were the Jackson Emery to his Jimmer Fredette, right? Similar to that.
Again, I'll take the compliment, but Jackson's so much better than I was. So, but thank you. I'll take it.
For both of you, I know that faith is a really important aspect of your life, and in such a competitive sport where emotions run high, I think that can be difficult to mix the two sometimes. Mark, how did you honor your faith and beliefs and still remain competitive on the court?
Yeah, well, I think having faith and believing in God is not opposed to being competitive. I think it helps you. I think a drive to be your best and succeed and be a part of a team and have a common goal. I love that. And again, we go back to our parents and our upbringing. It was just a part of who we were. We didn't know any better. We didn't know not to treat people kindly and to love people. And that's, again, my mother and father. And Devin was one of the first real high-profile athletes to go on a mission. And I think what a remarkable thing that was for him at that time. What a huge example of faith. And then to come back. I mean, it was thought at the time, Lauren, that if you went on a mission, the few that did, your athletic career was over. And then Devin Kemp comes back and leads the country in scoring and, has a great career. And I think that was a great example, not only to a bunch of other athletes that would follow, but to me as his brother. We had Sean Bradley coming in. And they thought, well, maybe, Mark, you want to stay a year before and play another year before you go on your mission. And so, I mean, there's always everybody that goes on a mission has something that they're letting go, whether it's a girlfriend or boyfriend or a nice car or a job or a sports career or piano, whatever. It's a hard thing to go on a mission, but because of Devin and my parents, I knew that was for me, and that was life-changing in every way and cemented my faith, and I think made me better in basketball and in life going forward. I'm sure Devin would echo that, but I think making a long answer short, it's just, again, a tribute to our wonderful mother and father and our siblings that that's just the way it was for us. And Devin and I, well, I could, but Devin couldn't even try to not be good because it just is in his fabric of his DNA. And so hopefully, nobody's perfect. Devin and I make mistakes, but hopefully people that interact with us can feel that, we love them and just want the best for everybody.
Well, I certainly make mistakes, but I don't know of any mistakes my brother Mark has made, so I'll just interject that.
Devin, you encouraged your friend Brian Taylor, who you played basketball with at BYU, who was also a general authority for the church, to serve a mission when you told him making a winning shot in a basketball game is great, but it can't compare to how you'll feel when you teach and baptize someone on your mission. The college basketball landscape has drastically changed since you guys were players, and you went to the highest levels of basketball playing in the NBA for the Pacers and the Suns. What advice would you give an athlete who's struggling to find that balance between faith and between seizing the opportunities that come their way?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Brian Taylor, Elder Brian Taylor. We all love him in his role as general authority. I was a general officer, not a general authority, but I got to rub shoulders with some amazing leaders. And Brian certainly fits that mold. But he was also a great teammate. He had a little Mark Durrant in him because it seemed like his goal was to make me look good. He was always trying to find ways to get me the ball. So I think he may have been tutored by Mark somewhere along the way. But to answer your question, one thing I will always say is what the Savior said when he counseled. He said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." And I think if the athletes, I think that's the perspective you want, is God is first, and I'm going to always remember Jesus Christ in all of my different pursuits. And as an athlete, you might have some ups and downs and some successes and some stumbles. but you can always rely on your Savior, and you can have that as a consistent part of your life. And that's been my thought process, and I've always felt so richly rewarded when the things of God came first.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more from former BYU basketball players Devin and Mark Durrant. This is Royal Legacy.
What's up, guys? This is Lauren McClain for Her Why and Royal Legacy. If you like my podcast, make sure you check out 2 Point Conversion, hosted by Connor Pay and Chase Roberts. These guys not only play football, but love to share their insights and testimony into the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. You can find it wherever you get podcasts or on the BYU radio app.
Welcome back to Royal Legacy. I'm Lauren McClain, and I'm talking with former BYU basketball players Mark and Devin Durrant. You both have kids and families of your own and grandkids even. Mark, how have you tried to teach your own kids some of the life lessons that you've learned from the game of basketball?
Well, I tried to teach them basketball, and that didn't work out particularly well. I had 3 boys, and just one played at Bingham High and did a fine job, but none of them were really interested. And you know what? That was a great blessing. It was just a relief almost to not have your kids want to play basketball. And there's so many other things. There's, school and so many other avenues where they can be themselves and excel and just be their best. And you can learn the lessons of basketball in so many different ways. And so it wasn't about basketball necessarily. It was just about, working hard and treating other people well and teamwork and all those things. I tried to make sure that they had that experience. Now, my youngest daughter, Stratton, I learned my lesson on the basketball. I said, let's try a different sport. And I love golf, and she's just a fantastic golfer. And I get to spend a lot of time with her on the golf course. And let me tell you, there's no greater thing in heaven and earth than being on the golf course with your daughter and playing golf with her. I mean, it's just been such a blessing. And so there's great lessons to be learned from sports, but it's not exclusive to sports. And it's just about having kids having something to do, a sense of purpose, gives them worth and dignity, and teaches them how to interact with others. And I certainly learned that from basketball, and it provided me some great opportunities in life. But yeah, it's really, it comes back to the gospel. It's gospel principles, and anything you do, if you have that as your kind of your structure and your backbone, whether it's basketball or school or piano or whatever your thing is, then you can really learn a lot and grow from that.
As you get older, that was very smart to put your daughter, and she's your youngest daughter, right, in golf? Because that's something you can do forever.
She just played in the state tournament, and it's remarkable to see how well she performs and performs under pressure. And I'm just so proud of her. And whether she has a good score or a bad score, I don't even care anymore. I love to see her out there performing and being her best and trying her best. She, as you can tell, is my heart, and I love her. I'm excited to see what happens for her. But just it's really, I guess the point is, it's just being with your kids too. I just love to be with my kids. Even my older boys are grown, Jordan and George and Dane. We still hang out. And I have another sibling that says, why do you hang out with your kids? And he doesn't have any kids, so he doesn't understand. But we're just best friends. We love hanging out. I know Devin's up there in Idaho just hanging out with his kids. And now that's life to me. That's everything to me. That's the whole purpose of it. Just be together as a family, love each other, support each other, cheer for each other, lift each other up. And again, we're not perfect, and we have our struggles, and every family has real trials in this world. But if you have that core structure and love, you can overcome anything. I believe that.
Lauren,
please.
I jump in? I just want to mention what a beautiful family Mark has. He married the right woman, and his three sons are magnificent, but I will just say that Stratton is a tremendous athlete. We're going to read about her and watch her on TV in the future. She's a tremendous golfer, and she's an angel, but I have to admit, I am quite jealous of my younger brother, Mark, because I think he works occasionally. I know he's a well-respected attorney. I'm just not sure how he gets all of his work done because he's spending so much time on the golf course with his amazing daughter who never seems to have a bad day on the golf course.
It's like you said, that's every father's dream right there. I think that's going to be my husband's goal with our boys for sure. Get them on the golf course. Then you can live there the rest of your life.
Listen, I've tried to get Devin to play golf my whole life, and he just is stubborn. He doesn't like it because he's not good at it, but it would take him about 2 weeks of playing until he was really good at it. He's so good at everything, but I'm hopefully one day I'll get him out on the course.
Well, golf's one of those games that you get frustrated real quickly if you're not doing well. Devin, what was going through your mind the very first time you heard Mark on the radio? Do you remember that?
Well, I don't remember the very first time, but what I often heard was, "Hey, I heard your brother Mark on the radio. Said you two sound just alike." And so I'd always chuckle at that, and I'd kind of feel quite proud that my voice could be a radio voice. But the interesting thing about it is back in the day, we could call our mother and she couldn't distinguish between the two of us simply by voice. So
I love it.
It was kind of a fun memory, and just it's incredible to think, though, that Mark has been doing this for 28 years with the amazing Greg Wrubell.
I know. And the amazing Mark Durrant, I think, goes hand in hand with Greg Wrubell at this point after 28 years. Mark, you've called some historic games in those 28 years. How does the excitement of playing in a big game compare to calling one of the big games?
Well,
because I've seen you. I mean, I've seen you on the sideline, and you're standing up, and I mean, you're kind of going crazy. So, how would you compare those two?
Listen, Greg and I, there's no secret, we're big BYU fans, and we're homers to a degree. But I think we do a good job of giving the enthusiasm that BYU fans want from their broadcasters, and yet still being objective. I've taken some heat at times for being a little bit too straightforward in my critiques, but I think people value that. They just don't want all sunshine and lollipops all the time. They want the real scoop. And certainly working with Greg Wrubell is another just enormous blessing in my life. And I'm resigned to being the Robin in most of my relationships, where my wife's Batman, Greg's Batman, Devin's Batman, and I love being Robin. That's kind of the story on that. I don't know what the question was, Lauren. I'm long-winded. When I'm with Greg, I have to be really quick, or else I'll miss the next play. But when I'm with Devin, I feel like I can talk as long as I want.
Very true.
Please.
My question was, how would you compare playing in a big game versus calling a big game? I liked your answer, though.
Well, I'll be shorter on this one. Playing, that's your whole life. It's your every meaning almost, maybe probably too much when you're playing. And it would be devastating to me when I lost. I mean, it was, I thought the world was going to end. And now if BYU loses, I'm like, gee, that's too bad. Where are we going to dinner, Greg? And I cared way too much for way too long. And I still care. I'm a BYU fan. And certain games I care more about than others, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the reality is my life doesn't – BYU sports is not going to affect my life. I'm happy when they win. I'm sad when they lose. But I'm just happy just to be there. And I love watching these guys grow and develop. That's not to say I wouldn't mind a national championship or something like that in the next couple of years. But the reality is – I'm just happy to be doing what I'm doing and being part of BYU, win or lose.
I think a lot of fans need to harness that perspective that you just mentioned, because I think it's really hard for some of them to do. My last question for you guys, and we're going to start with Devin, is what do you admire most about each other as you've been able to watch each other grow and progress through life as husbands, fathers, and now grandfathers?
Well, I just admire the man that my brother has become. And I've had a pretty good seat to watch him grow. And I mentioned earlier that he married an angel in Marilee, and the two of them, as they raised their family, I think that's probably the most satisfying thing for me, is to watch him as a father and how his children feel towards him and how good he is to Marilee. And I think in this setting, we can also say just the spiritual giant that he is in my eyes. One of my I get choked up way too often, so I'm going to try to steer away from that. But one of my favorite things is to hear Mark pray. It's a spiritual experience for me, and it's quite an honor to have a brother like Mark Durrant for a lot of different reasons. The public sees a lot of that, but I really admire the private man that is my brother, Mark Durrant.
So cool. Mark, what about for you?
Well, I wish I was half the man that my brother Devin thought I was. But it's not just me. Devin sees everybody as in the best possible light. I think he sees people as God sees them and sees the goodness. And he's so incredibly unselfish with his praise and kindness. You mentioned my daughter. She doesn't have any large brand sponsorships, but she's got an uncle that sponsors her golf.
Oh.
And that's Devin. And I think all of his nieces and nephews, which he has many, feel that Uncle Devin loves them. And you cannot have an experience with Devin without walking away feeling better about yourself. He's so unselfish, so good, and so kind. And what an example. I mean, yeah, you wonder how things could turn out so well for me, is because I saw it done. I saw how it was done. I had a blueprint. That was my brother Devin and my other siblings, who are just phenomenal people, and we've talked about my parents a lot, but I couldn't have been blessed more in my life than having Devin Durrant as my brother. And if listen, Lauren, if I could say something bad about him, I would. I mean, I would tell you. And again, he's not perfect, but man, I love my brother Devin. I just love him. And part of it is because I know he loves me. And that's special. And we both cry. We're criers, man. You get us in a sad situation, we're bawling our heads off. But I just feel overwhelmed with blessing. I don't want to make it all mushy and like that. But when you have blessings in your life, like a brother like Devin, I think it's important to acknowledge that and thank Heavenly Father for it, because that's rare. And I know it is. And I'm grateful for it.
I'm here with former BYU basketball players and Cougar legends, Devin and Mark Durrant. You guys are incredible, and I feel honored to be able to do this interview. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Lauren, you're always my favorite of all. You know, you're the best. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks again to Mark and Devin Durrant for coming on the show with me. Annie Robinson and Christy Solomon helped produce this episode with senior producer Terry South. You can join the Royal Legacy wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on BYURadio.org. Royal Legacy is a production of BYU Broadcasting.